Welcome to HPMHobby episode 1. In this video I'm going to show you how to build a tree from sprues and Miliput. So let's get started. So this is the idea of what I want to do. I want to build something like this tree for a unit filler or some terrain pieces or whatever you want to use it for. So for me this is going to be unit filler. I want this to go in a unit of samurai that I'm building for an army. You can see exactly what it's going to look like here. Basically what we start with is we get the base, and this is just a 40mm MDF base. You can see I put a magnet in there already. And what I want to do first is actually draw out the tree that I want to build, because this will actually give you a good idea of what it should look like and dimensions and how it's going to fit on the base. So now I've got a basic tree shape. I'm going to add a few bushes on here just so I know where they are. And you can see I've also added like a little lantern in there because I want to add a lantern under the tree to kind of fill the base out. And then we're going to do a little top view here as well, so I can have a look at what I want to do from the top, how it's going to fit on the base with the branches and the roots. And there's a little lantern to fill it out as well. So something else that I want to think about is also how it's going to look. If it's just very two-dimensional with just one set of bushy leaves, then it might look a bit flat. So what I want to do is also think about how I can make it a bit more 3D. So I want to kind of do a branch coming towards us with another bush there, and this is just a little sketch to keep that in mind when I'm building the tree. So now I've got everything ready. I've got my sprues, I've got my base, I also have some clippers, some plastic glue, Revel, standard, super glue, Loctite, best you can get in my opinion. Alright, so let's get going. So what I'm trying to do is choose the bits of the sprue that actually kind of have the most organic shapes. So this circular part would be great for a base. So I'm just going to trim off all the extra bits and try and find a way of fitting it on my 40mm base. I probably want to keep these small parts just to add a bit of extra shape to the tree, a bit of extra texture, because they can actually add to the overall aesthetic of the bark. So here I'm trying to fit it to the base. So from my plan I kind of wanted it over on one edge a bit more. So right now I'm just trimming it down a little bit just to make it fit in the base a bit better and be a bit more smooth, because obviously trees don't have a perfectly round base unless you buy them at IKEA. So that should fit pretty nicely there on the base. And we can add that long branch that's going to go over there towards that corner. So I'm just going to use my super glue, chuck it down on the base and let it dry a bit. Try not to get your fingers stuck to the base. So while that's drying, I'm going to get some parts from the sprue to form the trunk. So what I want to do is get these curved parts, and they will kind of form the bases of the trees and the roots. You see it's going to kind of fit up like that when I stick it down. And the height can also depend on how tall you want the tree. So this is probably a little bit tall, but it's a good start, and we can just stick it on straight on top of there like that. And we can use the angles of the sprue to actually help us build up the shape of the tree. So same with this one, so they can actually be stuck together almost. And also these circular little holes, as you can see here, they can also kind of form shapes in the tree. So it's going to be something like this when it's ready. Just going to flatten the bottom off to make it stick a bit better. So that looks like it fits pretty nicely there, and I'm just going to use my plastic glue to stick it down. I prefer using plastic glue in general when I'm gluing plastic on plastic because I feel like it has a bit better hold than the super glue. So you can see I kind of aligned it to the roots that I'm going to form for the base. I'll probably put the second one somewhere like there. So you can see here how the trunk will be slowly formed from the different bits of sprue. This one also needed a bit of trimming just to get it to fit nicely and get it in the right place. I'm probably just going to use the top of it there just to touch against the other one, just to give it a bit more stability. I'm always using a lot of glue here just to make it stick. Yeah, and then the third one here, just going to stick that so that the two are joined together, as I said, just to give it a bit more stability. Perfect. So now we have the basis of the trunk and the roots. So we're just going to let that one dry. Just to go back to the plan, you can see here where it's roughly going to look, how it's situated on the base, and then with the trunk and the roots, and then from the top view, you can see there are two roots that I drew in roughly where the two roots are, and the trunk is going to be over the top. So now what we're going to do is start to build the branches of the tree. So I've cut off some curved, more organic shaped parts from the sprue, and I'm just going to start sticking them onto the trunk of the tree. So firstly we're going to do the long branch. So we need to find it, get it to about the right height. And the reason that I wanted to put a lantern on the tree, partly because it's going to be a Japanese themed army, and I can use a 3D printed Japanese lantern to make it very flavourful, and also there's a lot of space underneath that tree, underneath the branch of the tree. So this means that if someone's looking at the unit filler, then there's going to be a lot of space. So if I add a lantern to it, then it's going to kind of fill that space in and also have a focal point and a bit of colour where the tree might be a bit brown or green. So here I'm leaving some of the little knobs to again give it some more texture and add to the feeling of the branch. And the sprues tend to be quite square, so I'm also shaving them down a bit to make them a bit more curved, just to make it slightly easier when I add the Miliput. So this one is going to be the top branch. I'm trying to put it at a slightly different angle to the first branch, just so it's not too flat. So now we're going to do the back side of the tree, just a short branch this time. And I really want to use this kind of circular shape on the sprue to add a bit more texture to the tree. So something like this, and again using a different angle and also maybe different height somewhere, just to give it a bit more of a sense of an organic shape. If it's too flat or too uniform, then it won't look very natural. Yeah, somewhere in the middle, and again just to highlight those two little circular objects that I'm going to keep into the shape of the tree, just to give it some texture. Yeah, so now you have an idea of where I'm going with this based on the plan. Keeping that in mind, I think maybe we need to add a couple more branches here. And we have to add that one that's coming out towards us, just to give it that kind of 3D aesthetic. So I found a really lovely shaped branch here, or piece of sprue, and we're going to use that for the one that's coming out towards the viewer on the plan. So you can see also it's also got some nice kind of branch shapes breaking off it, and we're going to keep some of these as well. So we've almost achieved now what we set out to achieve, at least for the frame of the tree. So I'm just going to add this final branch that we discussed with the sketch at the top. This is going to give it a bit more 3D effect. It's just a small piece, and this is going to kind of point out towards the viewer from our plan. So now with that in place, it looks like we have a pretty much finished skeleton for the tree. I'm just going to add a bit more glue to make sure it sticks, and the frame is in place. So you can kind of see basically how I just built up everything and added these small little circular parts, and that's going to come up in the next stage when we add the Miliput. So as you can see, my finger's a bit messy already because I've been pre-mixing my Miliput. I'm using the Games Workshop scalpel. Actually, it's really old, but it's done the job for me for many years. I'm using the white Miliput. I find this is the best one for kind of most tasks. You need to use 50-50 of the mixture and just knead it really well. Mix it together so that it doesn't have any kind of impurities. It needs to be a nice smooth mix. So again, we're going to try and do the trunk of the tree and the roots to start with, and I'm always doing Miliput in stages. I like to let it dry before I add the next stage, so we're just going to do the bottom half of the tree for now. So the first thing I do, I roll up a ball of Miliput, and we're going to just start fleshing it out. And this has been dry now for a couple of days, so I'm not too worried about the glue or anything like that falling apart. So yeah, really just roughly add it on, and then kind of try and use your fingers to shape it to the parts of the tree that you want it to cover. So for me, this is the roots and the lower part of the trunk. And just use your fingers just to shape it to the shape that you need, and don't be afraid of cutting bits off or adding bits as you go. So you see here the roots is getting a bit fat, so I'm just going to chuck that off, put it somewhere else that's needed. Need a bit more Miliput here just to finish off. Again, it's about even sized. Make sure that you mix them really thoroughly together. So now I've covered most of the tree, at least the base of the tree, with the Miliput. And what I'm going to do now is actually just use a bit of water on my fingers and just smooth it all down. So the water is going to make the Miliput a bit softer and easier to work with, and you can really kind of work it into the base to make sure there's no cracks and holes. You can get it, try not to get it too wet, but like just a little bit moist is good. So that's pretty much what we want. And I'm just going to wash my hands, and now we're going to get down to sculpting. So I'm going to use the rounded part of the tool for most of this, and to begin with I'm just going to make sure there's no cracks on the base, and I'm going to use my water deliberately on my tool to make it so that it doesn't stick to the tool. So right now I'm just smoothing in the edges, making it a little bit more shapely, and then using the edge of the tool just to kind of make sure there's no cracks in between the Miliput and the base. We can cover that up later, but for now I just want it nice and smooth. So you can see here I'm really adding some texture as well. I'm starting to with the tool, and I'm using the edge of the tool to make some shapes in the bark. And any kind of excess bits I'm just brushing to the side or putting back on top of to the top of the tree. So here it's getting a bit sticky, so I'll probably need a bit more water. Just finish this last part off. So essentially I'm just going to repeat this process over the whole tree, at least where the Miliput is, and use this kind of scoring technique to create the texture in the bark. Just putting the finishing touches on it now, and that bottom half of the tree is almost done. So you can see here, compared to the picture, what it's turning out to look like. So now I'm just going to do a bit more Miliput to build up the base of the tree. So trees don't normally just sit on a flat piece of ground, so it looks a lot nicer if you just build some of the base into the root. So this was a little bit that I had left over from last time. I'm just going to add to it. Now I'm just chucking a bit of Miliput into the holes between the roots, and this will give it a bit more organic kind of aesthetic. So now we've put all the Miliput in, I'm just going to smooth it down with a bit of water. You can even do this with your fingers, because what I'm going to do afterwards is actually going to put some gravel down on the base, and a lot of this won't even be able to be seen. It's just to give it some kind of height and smoothness to the ground. So that's about it. We have a little bit of height built into the roots of the tree, and now I'm going to use this Miliput to start working on the big branch. So this is exactly the same technique as before. I'm just pushing it on, and then afterwards I'm just going to smooth it down with my fingers, a little bit of water, and then use my sculpting tool to build up the texture. Just doing the final finishing touches now. Sometimes the Miliput gets a little bit bumpy, but these kind of little bits will just rub off afterwards. So here you can see I've actually almost finished the whole tree now. I'm just going to do the final few little bits. You can see here that I've kind of worked around that. I'm going to add a bit more on top of it, and then just do the last few little branches that are left over, and any missing bits that I haven't yet kind of finished in. So I'm just going to work on this last branch now and get to the other small parts in a second. So I think this is about it. I'm fairly happy with what I've achieved. You can see I've basically just gone from sprue to tree using a bit of Miliput and water. And if you compare to the picture that I drew at the start, it's reasonably close to what it should be. And then from the top as well, you can see that it looks fairly close to what I intended it to look like. Hopefully we'll add the lantern in the future towards the end of the process. But next, let's just look at it under some light and give you a better idea of the texture. So you can see here with a bit brighter light the kind of the contours of the tree that I've made from using the tool while the Miliput was wet. What I'm going to do next is actually add the foliage to the tree. So if you want to join me for my next video, I'll be showing you how to add foliage in a realistic way and turn the shell of the tree into a fully fledged deciduous marble. If you'd like to give me some feedback, I would really appreciate it. This is my first video. Please like and subscribe to the channel. You can contact me at HPMHobby@gmail.com. You can find me on Instagram and Twitter at HPMHobby. You can also let me know in the video comments below what you liked, what you didn't like about this video, and also request what you want me to hobby next. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.